1893, Comstock's airship pierced New York's skyline. Luda's engines hummed like a hymn. 1946. Ryan's bathysphere sank, steel groaning, spires piercing waves. Columbia's gaslight hiss blends with the lighthouse's pulse. Both cities breathe, rot. Rot sisters' constellations, diaries, trade for their salt visions stained. Multiverse whisper in fractures where their rusted code fingers traced cracks. Rot sisters' constellations, diaries, trade for their salt visions stained. Multiverse whisper in fractures where their rusted code fingers traced cracks. The year 1946. Andrew Ryan carved a covenant beneath the waves. Asterisk a city free of God and kings. Asterisk a new Eden, he wrote, for minds unshackled by faith or crown. The little sisters wandered these halls, their whispered prayers replaced by harvested light. But their crayon scars on walls and page sweat if they were not mere scribbles, a language layered beneath objectivist dogma. A code hummed through the veins of Rapture's spire, did they know? The children who mapped this labyrinth, their fingers trailing equations no adult could read. What if their diaries held a frequency? A signal to bind fractured realities before the sea swallowed the first stone. The founders built their utopia on a lie. But what if the truth lay in the margins, inked by children who saw the cracks too soon? The founders carved Rapture's lifeblood from the bones of children. Tenenbaum and Suchong called it survival. The girls called it waking. Ink-stained fingers traced equations. No child should know atom residue etched into diaries, a language of loops and fractures. A silent scream across dimensions. They conditioned the little sisters to harvest atom from corpses. Conditioned them to the Eve codes in the condition the little margins. Each scribble a thread, woven into a net to catch the multiverse's collapse before Rapture's greed became its gravity. The program's architects blindfolded themselves. One girl's diagram mirrored a stellar alignment. Another's doodle echoed a black hole's event horizon. Coincidence? Or a reckoning deferred? The same atom that fueled Rapture's spires now hummed in the girl's blood, a key forged in their suffering. They never asked if the cost was too high, they only asked if the harvest was pure. Now the diaries are locked away along with the question of who feared the answer. The multiverse breathes. It breathes in the scars of children. What if the founders knew the scribbles weren't just for Adam? What if they buried a beacon and buried their guilt with it? The beacon still flickers, ink on paper, a code. A suffocating hope. Rapture's utopia was built on a lie. The truth was never erased. It was waiting. Rapture's spires clawed highest in 1950. Atom glow pulsed through every pipe, every splicer's roar, every little sister's hollow gaze. They were not mere harvesters. Their diaries scrawled in child hand, ink smudged by damp gloveshelled a cipher. A map of fractures between worlds. No one saw it. Not the architects who drowned in their own hubris, not the girls conditioned to drain life from the dead. The symbols looped like prayers in a language no one taught them, a beacon blinking in the dark. Who built this utopia thought they'd conquered physics. They carved cities from salt water, made monsters worship money. Yet the diaries whispered of something vaster than Rapture's borders, a net of threads fraying. One page shows a child's sketch, a sister holding two hearts, not metaphor, a key. A little sister's task was never just to harvest Adam, it was to log the tremors where realities bled. Someone erased the pattern or feared it. The diaries remain, their ink still wet with the 1952 storm that sank the first splicer warlords. The code waits. The multiverse waits, a golden age built on a wound, a hope that suffocates still alive. The Civil War carved Rapture into splintered kingdoms. Fires bloomed where factions clashed. Screams echoed through conduits once humming with utopian dreams. In the heart of this collapse, the little sisters were made younger. Their conditioning rooms reeked of antiseptic and fear cold, clinical rot. Scalpels etched not just atom extraction protocols but symbols, frantic scrawls of asterisk help asterisk. Each girl's diary bled ink-stained equations, a cipher to stabilize collapsing realities. The splicers never noticed, they only saw compliant vessels. In one scene, a surgeon's scalpel trembles as he carves a 10-year-old's spine. The girl whispers numbers under her breath. The room's flickering lights cast jagged shadows, as if the city itself convulses. A nurse pauses, glancing at the child's palm where a glyph pulses, half erased by fresh blood. She looks away. The scalpel never stops, even the walls bleed numbers. The war's third year, the diaries grew darker. Smears of rust-red atom mixed with ink, as if the pages bled in tandem. One entry, smudged by trembling hands, describes the thread that holds the sky from splitting. A week later, that diary vanished from the archives. Who took it? Who wants the sky to split? The multiverse waits. But Rapture's foundations are already cracking. Diaries were testimonies to Rapture's fall and a greater unraveling. Their scribbles a cipher for dying multiverse. Silence in archives is a scar. Who bled to keep sky whole? Answer lies where echoes fade. Next fracture is near. The cold seeped through Jack's suit as he stepped into the lighthouse. The air hummed with static, a metallic tang clinging to his tongue. In 1960, Rapture's veins still pulsed with Andrew Ryan's hubris, but the little sister's diaries already whispered of something older. Their voices, recorded in gasping bursts between machinery's groan, hinted at tides no human hand could steer. A flickering bulb reveals a diary page, scrawl of asterisk, the threads fray where the sisters sing. Asterisk faint, beneath the ink faint as a breath spirals the same glyphs that now mark collapsing realities. Jack's boot crunches glass, the sound fractures the silence like a shiver. He doesn't know he's following a map. The little sisters did, their final entries torn from their throats by unknowing hands, curled into ash when the firestorm came. In the final moments, the lighthouse trembles. The diary's last page is gone, not burned, not torn, asterisk erased. Asterisk a void where words should be, as if the air itself had swallowed them. The ocean roars, but the silence that follows is louder. Jack's finger hovers over the delete button. He doesn't hear the whisper that follows him out. Asterisk the sky was a wound. You stitched the wrong thread. Asterisk how many warnings did the multiverse send before this? The diary's spiral code now repeats in the static between realities. A beacon, a funeral song. The answer drowns in Rapture's ruins, where the little sister's voices fade into the tide. The next fracture breathes. The ruins hum no hymns. The lighthouse stands hollow, its beam extinguished. Once its light threaded reality as a man, a city, a cycle spun in blood and salt. The little sister's diaries remain, their pages curled with age. Not confessions, not warnings, patterns, symbols. Faint as ripples on a drowning tide. Each entry a glyph, each glyph a thread in a net cast too wide to see. Were they architects of a silent alarm, or prisoners in a cipher they could not unlock? The lighthouse repeats its ritual. A new man arrives, a new city rises. The cycle grinds, unaware of the fracture it feeds. The diary's code stays unbroken. No founder's hand erased it. No protocol to stabilize the rift, only absence. A silence that swallows echoes. The little sister's voices, once sharp with purpose, now whisper through the cracks. Their code was never a key, it was a question, a plea, a signal lost in the static between worlds. What waits for that signal? What listener or leviathan holds its breath across infinite fractures? The next lighthouse ignites. The next man ascends, the cycle turns, and the question drowns, again. Tenenbaum's hands still smell of ozone, where he carved equations into the lighthouse walls. He knew the girl's scribbles were language chaotic, urgent, alive, but he burned them, one by one, ash in the ventilation shafts. Suchong's pragmatism reeks of iron, his ledger entries smudged with the ink of signed contracts. Asterisk a resource is a resource, asterisk he rasped as the little sisters coughed blood onto his polished shoes. He sold their whispers to the highest bidder, never pausing to trace the glyphs curling like smoke from their bedsheets. Lamb's lab hums with static, his obsession a fever tracked in the cadence of his breath. He leans close to a trembling girl, murmurs, asterisk power isn't given it's taken, asterisk before severing her spine to harvest the atom still pulsing in her veins. The city's final philosophy was etched in every choice. Rapture drowned because its architects believed salvation was a debt to be collected, not a gift to be shared. The diary's code could have fractured the cycle. Instead, it was folded into ash, ink, and bone. Tenenbaum's guilt is a fuse, Suchong's greed is the spark, Lamb's hunger is the explosion, the next beacon blinks. The next lighthouse fails, and the next man always the next man. The diaries remain, ink bleeds through Rapture's salt water, Symbols repeat circles nested in fractured grids, not child's scrawl, a language. The Ludes twins wove dimensions into stories. Their physics bent time, their tales bent fate. These pages mimic their syntax. A code not to save, to signal. A distress call etched in wax and blood. Who read it? Who chose to let the multiverse burn? The little sisters wrote in the dark. They knew the cost of harvest. Knew the lighthouse's true purpose. Each entry a breadcrumb, each symbol a coordinate, a map to nowhere or everywhere. The twins' experiments fractured the sky. These diaries might have mended it, but the ink dries, the voices fade. The code remains broken, no protocol, no plea, only silence where equations should scream, erased not by founders, by hands unseen. By a nameless shadow that thrives on collapse, you trace the circles, your finger follows the grid, a key waits. But who turned it, and why let the beacon die? The diaries were not mere records. They were whispers across dimensions, a distress signal, scribbled in ink and sacrifice. Each entry a cipher, each page a thread in a tapestry that mapped the fractures between worlds. The little sisters did not know they were scribes of a dying cosmos. They only knew the lullabies of a city that thrived on its own hunger. Rapture's philosophy, like all that come before and after, folded inward. It became a prism, refracting its own hubris until the light turned to ash. The lighthouse stood as both beginning and end, a monument to the cycle. Man builds, man corrupts, man erases. Not in the symbols, but in their absence. A gap in the pattern, a silence that spoke of hands that reached too late. The multiverse narrows, breathes in, and the diaries rot in the dark. What does a civilization become when its final message is a question mark? The answer hums in the walls. The answer is already written in every ruin that waits to be found. And in every found, a new beginning is drowned. Lighthouse's pulse cuts through Columbia's storm, a rhythm older than Comstock's lies. 1893, Ludes field blueprints etched into a child's scribbles. Beacon coded in ash and hymn.